Welcome to AskReddit is Fun. Today is all about the scariest ghost stories, where Redditors share unexplained sightings and their paranormal encounters, even creepy portraits. It's all here. So buckle up and enjoy the scary ride. A topic by Crusader. I have a really good one that is actually true. It happened to me. This could have been a dream, but I testify to this day that what I saw was a ghost. So here I am, a young guy who awoke in the middle of the night. I'm currently sharing a bunk bed with my brother, and I am the top bunk. I look out into my living room and notice everything is dark. However, there's a person in an evening gown dusting my fireplace mantle. The woman was slender, which threw off guard because my mom is obese. I yelled out, "Mom?" to the person dusting the counter. The person turned around. It was not my mom, but some older woman. Suddenly, she shrieks, and her face becomes severely deformed. It was like the crap you see in horror movies, like ridiculously scary, especially for a young kid. I blink my eyes and she's gone. I somehow went back to bed, and the next morning I went to my living room and noticed that even though the TV was off, there was something written on the screen. It said, "Do not be afraid." The text slowly faded, and no one else saw it. As a young boy, this was, and still is, extremely terrifying to me. If there was some dust left on the screen, I'd have left a note saying, "You're easily sending me mixed messages here, ghost lady." My friend told me a story his dad told him. Every day he would come home from school, and he'd be the first one there for at least an hour or two. One day, he walked in the front door, and the TV was on, and instantly turned off. He stood in the doorway for a second, turned around, and walked away. He didn't go back into the house until his parents came home. It gives me the heebies thinking about it. Ghost is watching some old school stuff. A man goes to a bed and breakfast. While checking in, the owner tells him that the room next to him is undergoing some repairs, so don't open the door or anything. The man goes to his room, drops off his things, but then is bored. He pokes around the house a little. With nothing else to do, decides to see the room that needs repairing. He tries the door, and it's locked. He wonders why the owner would even bother warning him about this room since it's locked anyway. Whatever. He peeks through the keyhole, and the room beyond isn't actually being repaired. It's completely empty, except for a figure in the far side of the room, sitting in a chair facing the wall. The man stands up again, creeped out. Just to make sure he wasn't imagining things, he bends down and looks through the keyhole again. This time, he doesn't see the figure, or the room at all. Just the color red, like someone was blocking the keyhole with construction paper. Weirded out, the man goes to bed. When he's at breakfast with the owner the next morning, the man asks him casually about the repairs in the next room. The owner sighs and says, "Truthfully, I don't rent out that room, because so many people have told me it's haunted by a ghost with red eyes." "Daddy, I had a bad dream." You blink your eyes and pull up on your elbows. Your clock glows red in the darkness. It's 3:23. "Do you want to climb into bed and tell me about it?" "No, Daddy." The honesty of the situation wakes you up more fully. You can barely make out your daughter's pale form in the darkness of your room. "Why not, sweetie?" "Because in my dream, when I told you about the dream, the thing wearing Mommy's skin sat up." For a moment, you feel paralyzed. You can't take your eyes off your daughter. The covers behind you begin to shift. Time for a blind elbow strike. Holy crap, that was eerie. During Hurricane Gustav in 2008, I think, I evacuated to a church in Baton Rouge with a friend and his family. At the same time, there was an entire nursing home's worth of old people staying in the church. My friend, his family, and myself all shared one room together. In this church, there was one bathroom that was large, similar to something that would be in elementary school. A few stalls, a trough urinal, etc. One night during the storm, my friend and I made a trip to the bathroom. The lights had gone out, middle of the hurricane and all. The church had a musty, eerie feel to it, kind of like when you turn out the AC in a home for a few days. The area surrounding the church was also dead quiet, since there was no electricity in the area. The bathroom was several halls over from our room, so we grabbed our flashlights and set out. While walking down one large hall, we shined our flashlights ahead, and there, at the end of the hall, sat an old man in a wheelchair in the middle of the night with no one around. Now, this hall was incredibly long, so we could make him out, but we couldn't really see all his facial features, etc. Once we grasped what we saw, we turned and looked at each other, semi-freaked out. Then, we shined our flashlights back to where he was, and there was nothing there. It was as if he vanished. No signs, no sound, nothing. Needless to say, we hauled ourselves back to the room. 2 days after my grandfather died, the neighborhood security guard knocks on our door on a Sunday morning. He told us, "An old man came to your house earlier, knocked on your door for half an hour, and finally left." When I asked him what he wanted, he told me he needed to say goodbye to someone that he never had a chance to meet. We were all stunned, had no idea who this old man was, or who he was looking for. When the guard came in, he shouted, "That's the old man," pointing at a picture of my grandfather. My entire family froze for a minute. It's not 100% sure if the guard was telling the truth, but I almost like believing that my granddad wanted to say goodbye to his newborn sister before resting in peace. Okay, this happened to me when I was a junior in high school. It was December, and it had just started snowing that evening. My best friend and I were in debate and getting ready for our state qualifiers that were the next day. We were writing our cases as usual, at each other's throats over the details of every case. It was a stressful, tense evening. We finally finished our cases at about 3 a.m. Then, we went to my room for the night. Almost as soon as we got to my room, we hear what sounds like the water turning on the other end of the house. No big deal. Probably my parents, I think. Then, we hear the front door open. I told her, I bet Mom woke up and wanted some fresh air. It made sense. I really thought that's what it was, until we heard incredibly heavy footsteps in my living room, headed for my room. They were not any of my family's footsteps. Then they stopped. My friend and I looked at each other, and we were both freaked out, just standing, frozen in my room. We walked closer to each other, and the footsteps started again, but this time, they were running towards us. We both flipped. We grabbed each other's hands out of fear, and my bedroom door flew open. We both looked at the door. Nobody was there. We ran to the bathroom that's connected to my room. I closed, locked the door, and stood up against it. When we finally got the balls to do it, we sprinted to the parents' room, crying and hysterical. We obviously startled my parents awake. They said neither of them had gotten up. My dad grabbed his gun and looked outside. No tracks in the snow, anywhere around our house. The portraits always creeped me out. There was a hunter in the woods who, after a long day hunting, was in the middle of an immense forest. It was getting dark, and having lost his bearing, he decided to head in one direction until he was clear of the increasingly oppressive foliage. After what seemed like an hour, he came across a cabin in a small clearing. Realizing how dark it had grown, he decided to see if he could stay there for the night. He approached and found the door ajar. Nobody was inside. The hunter flopped down on the single bed, deciding to explain himself to the owner in the morning. As he looked around, he was surprised to see the walls adorned with many portraits, all painted in incredible detail. Without exception, they appeared to be staring down at him, their features twisted into looks of hatred. Staring back, he grew increasingly uncomfortable. Making a concerted effort to ignore that many hateful faces, he turned to face the wall, and exhausted, he fell into a restless sleep. Face down in an unfamiliar bed, he turned blinking in unexpected sunlight. Looking up, he discovered that the cabin had no portraits, only windows. This story takes place in 1975. My grandpa was a farmer. He was living in a village and he had apricot trees in a field a long way out of the village. It was a small village, poor lit. Imagine how it was in the fields. You know these villages with 100 permanent citizens. Well, the best time for watering in the summer is the night, so he went to water the trees. When he took them back home, remember, it was a pitch black with no moon countryside, he saw behind him two shining eyes that he thought it was a ghost. Terrified, He yelled and ran, and even threw rocks at it. Nothing happened. It kept following him. When it reached my grandpa, he turned out to be a stray little donkey. Poor little donkey. True story. My best friend died of cancer back in 2002. We were incredibly close in every way, and we spent the majority of our free time together. Almost a year after she died, I was in my apartment, sleeping, and my phone rang around 3 a.m. I had one of those Sony Ericsson's T610s. I was very groggy and picked up the phone from my nightstand and looked at it. I saw it was my friend's number. I immediately became alert and awoke and answered the phone very curious. I said hello a few times, but all I could hear was a very loud static for about 30 seconds. Eventually, the call ended. At this point, I was freaking out and called the number back only to get an automated recording that this number was out of service. I then called her mother's house to see if possibly her older sister may have had my friend's old phone and I might have called me by accident. But there was no answer at my friend's mother's home. Come to find out, the remaining family was away in Miami. After they came home a few days later, I took the phone to them and showed them the call log, and they were in disbelief. They went to my friend's room and got the phone out of the drawer where it had been sitting for months. Battery stone cold dead. Reminds me of an apparently true story where a train derailed and one of the passengers who died in the wreck started calling all of his relatives. The relatives contacted the police, who would then trace the calls to his dead body in the wreck. His phone was in his hand. He spent his last moments calling his loved ones. I hope you enjoyed the video as much as I did making it. Let us know about your own scary stories in the comments. If you are new to this channel, you can subscribe. I upload new videos every day. Until then, check out another video if you like.